Hi, I'm Kelly with citruscycles.ca. I'm here with the 2018 Riese Muller Nevo. It's an incredibly comfortable, very accessible, and fun and easy to ride step-through e-bike powered by the Bosch Performance Line CX. If you're looking for a step-through bike because you want something that's easy to get on and off, maybe you commute and you start and stop a lot, or maybe you want to load up the pannier bags, put some pannier bags on the rear rack here and not worry about trying to get your leg over the rack when it's full, then a step-through like the Nevo is ideal for you. Now, if you aren't looking for a step-through, you might still want to keep watching this video because you'll discover there's a lot of advantages to a step-through and no disadvantages. The Nevo handles really, really well. In fact, it performs as well as any diamond frame bike, but I'll talk about all of that later. With the Bosch CX drive, the Nevo is responsible, it's powerful, it's really safe. And with the Nuvinci option and the Gates carbon belt here, you get a maintenance-free bike. And like all the Riese Muller bikes, they are made in Germany. So it's available in 3 different sizes and 3 different colors with 2 different drivetrain options. And I'm going to take you through all of those options in this video. Then I'll take you on a ride test. You can find the complete specs, current pricing. You can even order online on our website at citruscycles.ca. There you'll find our contact information, so if you have questions, if there's anything I missed in the video, you can reach out to us there. If you want to schedule an appointment to come try it yourself here in Ladysmith, or take advantage of our Try at Home program, you can contact us through our website as well. In addition, when you search for Nevo on our website, it's N-E-V-O, you'll see the size, color, and drivetrain options along with the geometry and detailed measurements. So when you order a Nevo from us, Riese Muller will actually make the bike for you in Germany. And so you can choose from 3 different colors. You can see we've got the white here. We have racing red, which is beautiful. It's one of my favorite colors. And we also have the midnight blue. And here's a midnight blue that I just took out of the box. I haven't got it set up yet, but I wanted you to be able to see the color. You can see it's really very dark blue. That's, I guess, why they call it midnight blue. But if we get it out into the sunshine, it's kind of a metallic, and there'll be a little bit of a sparkling in the blue. But it's a really nice, very subtle. So if you want something that you're not going to be noticed, midnight blue. If you want to stand out and be seen in traffic, certainly that racing red is a good choice. And the white also is quite visible as well. So you've got 3 different options for the colors. It's also available in 3 different sizes, and I'm really excited to see the addition of the small sizes here that uses a 26-inch tires compared to the 28-inch tires on the other 2 sizes. So this is great for shorter people, obviously, but it's also ideal for anybody who feels safer when they're closer to the ground. These 26-inch tires really get you a little bit closer to the ground than the 28. Now you'll notice that with the small frame size, not only are you getting these 26-inch tires, you're actually getting wider tires. These are 55 millimeter. They are the Big Ben Plus, and on the 2 larger sizes, this is the medium here, you're still getting these Big Ben Plus with the 28-inch tire, but they're actually narrower 50 millimeter tires. And it's interesting because when you can kind of compare them side by side, that 5 millimeters is making a pretty big difference. Part of that is that the 50 millimeter tires are on a 30 millimeter rim on the medium and the large, whereas we have these, they're 30 millimeter rim on the small side, and I believe this is a 23 millimeter rim on the medium and the large. So that's interesting that you get that wider tire. So although it's only 5 millimeters, it does look more significant, and it does give you more contact area for the tires. Now, speaking of tires, I'm also really excited. 2018 brings us a new model of the Nevo Nuvinci GH. And this has a higher weight capacity, so of 160 kilos or 350 pounds, which is cool. But what I really like about the Nuvinci is that Riese Muller put on these Schwalbe Supermoto X. They are 27.5 by 2.4 inch wide tires. So these are massively wide tires. I love these tires. They perform really well in all conditions, wet, gravel. They're really good in soft sand or loose gravel because you've got that wide contact patch there. And the interesting thing about the profile of the tires, they've used these really nice wide rims. And so when you're on pavement, you really are only having you're not experiencing a lot of rolling resistance because you're really just rolling along on the kind of the middle part of the tire. But when you get into gravel, sand, anything soft, then the whole width of the tire comes into effect, and it really helps you out with maintaining traction and control, stability, and increases your confidence. Now that isn't to say there's anything wrong with the Big Bend Plus tires. These are great tires, but I do love the upgrade to the Supermoto X tires on the Nevo GH, New Vinci. You also get an upgrade to an air fork. This is the Sun Tour air fork. It's the XCR32, and you get an upgrade to the Thud Buster suspension seat post. And so when you add all of those things up, to me, it's definitely worth the extra to upgrade to the GH New Vinci. The regular Nevos do come with a suspension seat post as well, but it's one that kind of goes up and down instead of the Thud Buster, which goes forward and backwards. Speaking of the suspension fork, as I mentioned, the GH does come with the air fork. The regular Nevo comes with a spring fork. Interestingly, if you go with the small size with the 26-inch tires, it also comes with an air fork. So you can actually take that cap off and use a shock pump to adjust the air to change the handling of the bike depending on your weight. And that's one of the cool things about an air fork. And air forks tend to be a little bit plusher of a ride compared to a spring as well. So you can see you have lots of different options available. So feel free to call or email if you have questions about the options, as I'm happy to help you find the best ones for your needs. In a few minutes, I'm going to step you through all of the specs of the Nevo, and I'll take you for a ride test. But first, let me talk about who this bike is for, why I really like it, and why you might like it too. The Nevo is actually one of our most popular e-bikes, and the reason is simple. It's comfortable because of the upright riding position, but at the same time, it's very safe because of the excellent handling. Obviously, a step-thru is really accessible. It has a lot of advantages. So even if you don't have mobility issues right now, a step-thru really encourages you to ride more because it makes it so easy to get on and off. This is a really low step here. You can see it's nice and wide, super easy to get on and off. And one of the things that they've done to make the handling characteristics like a regular bike is that you'll notice the battery placement here is centered on the bike, and rather than on the rear rack, which we see a lot in step-thrus. And so I love the fact that they've really kept the weight in the middle of the bike, and that really improves the handling characteristics of the bike. So being able to get on and off your bike so easily, it really invites you to get on and ride. And when you get an e-bike, you will find that you start riding more often. All of our customers tell us that they start riding further distances, they start using it for grocery shopping, commuting. You'll load up the rack with pannier bags and do day trips. And that's when you'll really appreciate the ease of getting on a bike. When you've loaded up the rack and the bike's really heavy with all of your gear in it, having to lean the bike and manage it while you're throwing your leg over the back can be difficult. Having the step-thru where you can just walk right through is really easy. And of course, any time where you have to start and stop a lot, if you're commuting, riding in the city, suddenly you have to stop. It's so easy to get on and off the bike. And it's really the type of thing that you have to try to understand. So when you try the Nevo, not only will you see how accessible it is, but also how comfortable and how much more confident it will make you feel. In fact, it's worth mentioning that sometimes people are concerned about the handling characteristics of a step-thru. I can remember years ago, one of the first e-bikes I rode was a step-thru with a front hub motor. And wow, it was terrible. I kept hitting my foot. I wiped out on a corner because it just couldn't handle cornering. It was fine if you rode in a straight line, but you know, that's not how I ride a bike. That was a long time ago, but you know what? Even now, we still see problems with step-throughs that have speed wobble issues. That is where you go at a higher speed and the bike just starts shaking because the frame isn't rigid enough. With the Nevo, you're not going to run into any of those problems. You can see it's a really well-built, very rigid frame. They've integrated the rack here as part of the frame as well, which helps with the stiffness of the frame. So, you know, I'm really demanding of my e-bikes, and I spend a lot of time riding the Nevo, pushing it to see how far I can push it, and it handles just like a regular diamond frame bike. So in the end, if you're thinking, I'm not really keen on a step-through, well, you know what? There's no disadvantage. It handles like a regular bike, and you can easily get on and off of it. So my wife, in fact, before she upgraded to her Riese Muller Homage, which is essentially a Nevo, but with full suspension, I rode it a lot. In fact, it was one of my favorite bikes. I just would jump on it to go to the grocery store or go for a ride in the evening. And so really, the only thing that makes the Nevo better is the Homage, having the full suspension. And I've got a video review of it on our website. So it's very similar, but it does give you the Riese Muller control technology, which means that both of your tires are on the ground all the time, and it gives you a more comfortable ride. But of course, that increases the price a fair amount. So the Nevo is a great value, and with that suspension seat post, it makes it super comfortable. Now, part of how they've made the Nevo so comfortable is they are using an elevated stem here. So you can see it's got a fairly high angle, and what that does is that gets you in a more upright riding position. So that gives you more confidence as well as making it more comfortable, because you can easily see around you, especially if you're riding in city traffic, and also makes you well seen. We've got these super ergon comfort grips here. They're ergonomic, nice and wide, easy to rest your palms on, and makes it very comfortable. We've got relatively flat handlebars here, so they don't curve back like some handlebars on step-throughs. These are relatively flat, and I really like that because that actually increases your control over the bike and gives you more confidence. So on bikes like the Swing over here, you'll see we've got the swept back handlebars, and a lot of people really like those. And I always like to point out to people, you know, that is very comfortable, but it does slightly reduce your control over the bike. You'll notice, for example, on mountain bikes, of course, they always have flat bars because it allows you more leverage to control the bike. So these wide bars, flat bars, really give you more control and confidence to ride aggressively if you need to. So if you ride on trails, this is a great bike for trails. City streets where you need to just, you know, get out of the way quickly or something like that, you're going to be able to control the bike very well. The suspension fork obviously is also going to give you comfort, but again, that's also a control and a confidence feature, because when you're riding on rough pavement or trails, you're not going to have to swerve to avoid the bumps or the rocks, because the suspension fork is going to really help absorb those, especially when you go with the GH Nuvinci, where you've got the air fork, or the 26-inch tire version, the small size, also an air fork that really is going to absorb a lot of the bumps. It's going to reduce your fatigue as well, because it's going to be transmitting less vibrations from the road, and that certainly can be tiring. So when you have the suspension fork to absorb that, it makes you less tired and more confident, helps you to be in better control of the bike. You know, I find the saddle on the Nevo is actually quite comfortable. A lot of people really like this. In fact, we stock extras of it for people that buy different bikes to change to the saddle, because it is very popular. But of course, you can always change that as well. And so we do have the suspension seat post, which I mentioned earlier. This is one that's going to go up and down as you go over the bumps. You can see it kind of moves up and down there. Try that again. There we go. If you upgrade to the GH Nuvinci, then you do get the Thud Buster, and the Thud Buster is designed to kind of go forward and backwards rather than up and down. And that, I guess the idea of that is it's a little bit more effective in terms of absorbing the bumps, but it also prevents your leg length from changing as you pedal, whereas the one that goes up and down can have an impact on that. It's not a big deal, but the Thud Buster is definitely a really nice upgrade, and that's available on the GH. So one other feature that can increase the enjoyment of your riding experience while also reducing the time and expense of maintenance is going with the Nuvinci option. So you can get the Nevo in the Touring Edition, and I'll try to do a short video of that a little bit later. The Touring Edition would have a chain, a cassette, and a derailleur. It's an 11 to 42 tooth cassette. It's 10 speeds. And in that configuration, if you go with that, you're going to save some money, but you do need to keep your chain, cassette, and derailleur cleaned, oiled, and adjusted. And after every few thousand kilometers, you're actually going to need to replace those. Just like you would on a regular bike, the cassette, the derailleur, the chain, they are going to wear out. They're wear items. So keep that in mind, because that is going to be an expense and something you're going to have to spend time on. If you upgrade to the Nevo NuVinci or the Nevo GH NuVinci, then you get this awesome Gates carbon fiber belt instead of a chain. This is maintenance free. You don't have to oil it, you don't have to clean it, there's nothing you need to do with it. You could just leave it and not touch it ever. We find that belts typically last longer than a chain. Some people say 2 to 4 times longer than a chain. If it does stretch and you need to adjust the tension, Riese Muller's designed the bike frame around that so you can actually slide the rear wheel back a little bit to adjust the tension if you need to. But basically this carbon fiber belt is going to last a really long time and requires no maintenance. As well, you get the NuVinci continuously variable transmission. So you see everything is inside here and it's sealed. Again, no oil, no adjustments, nothing you need to be doing, no maintenance at all. This isn't going to have to be replaced. A cassette, the derailleur, over time, they will wear out. You will have to replace them. If your bike falls over and you damage the derailleur or it gets out of whack or the cable stretches, you need to make those adjustments. If you have a bike with a cassette, chain, and derailleur, you know what I'm talking about, right? Things start shifting when you don't expect it to, or they don't shift when you want it to, and you have to take it in and make those adjustments. With this NuVinci system, you won't have to do any of that maintenance. But it also makes it a really comfortable ride because the NuVinci system allows you to shift while you're stopped. So you can see it's a very intuitive system. It's continuously variable, so there's no numbers on the display here to tell you what gear you're in. Instead, there's a little cyclist here. And basically, as I adjust this, you can see if I go this way, the cyclist is going flat. And if I adjust it this way, the cyclist is going up a hill. So very intuitive. If you are on a flat section and you want to pedal fast, then you just twist this and you can see the cyclist is on a flat section here. You're coming up to a hill, you twist this, and see the cyclist is starting to go uphill, and so that makes it easier to pedal. So harder to pedal or a higher gear, easier to pedal, lower gear, but there's no gears, it's continuously variable. So the great thing about that is you're climbing a hill, starts off not too steep, not a problem, gets steeper, make it steeper, becomes less steep, make it less steep, and you can continuously adjust that and as you climb the hill. So the neat thing about the NuVinci system is you can shift while you're pedaling, but you can also shift while you're stopped. So right now, obviously, I'm stopped and I'm still shifting and it's having an immediate effect. With the Touring Edition and any bike that has a cassette, chain, and derailleur, you can't shift while you're stopped. If you've tried that and you shift, nothing happens. Then you start pedaling and you hear that terrible crunching noise as your drivetrain is trying to shift from a standstill, and it's really hard to pedal and it's not good for your drivetrain. So if you are riding in a situation where you have to stop suddenly, or you're the type of person that just has a hard time remembering to downshift before you stop, in other words, if you find yourself always in the wrong gear, it's really hard to start pedaling. It's because you probably forgot to downshift. And sometimes that's hard to remember. With the NuVinci system, you don't have to remember. If you forgot to downshift, no problem. So if I'm in my harder gear, so to speak, then I can simply come to a stop and, oh, right, it's going to be hard to start out like that. So I'll just twist it a little bit here to make it easier to start. I can do that while I'm stopped. You can't do that with a regular bike. So with the NuVinci system, it's continuously variable. There's not a specific number of gears. You just twist this till you find that it's comfortable. And a lot of people, ask me like, well, where should I have it? It's like, well, have it wherever it feels comfortable. If you feel like you're pedaling, your legs are moving too quickly, make it flatter. If you feel like it's too hard to pedal, make it steeper. and all you do is twist that. So the continuously variable feature is awesome, but the ability to shift while you're stopped and while you're pedaling is also really useful. Now, if you come and try this, the other thing I'll point out is that while you're stopped, you don't have the entire range available to you for shifting. Once the bike is moving, you'll be able to make this steeper or flatter. So you can still shift while you're stopped up through about probably 60 or 70% of the range. While the bike is underway, you'll be able to shift it even more. If you're pedaling really, really hard, it can be a little bit harder to shift. If you pedal a little less hard, then it'll be easier to shift. But all this becomes really apparent, really obvious, super easy to use when you come in and try it. So why would you go with the Touring Edition? Well, some people prefer having 10 gears. They don't like a continuously variable transmission, or they want to save money initially, then you would go with the Touring Edition, which is going to give you the chain cassette derailleur. Just keep in mind your maintenance requirement and that you can't shift while you're stopped. Now, if you've been riding a bike for years, you ride a lot, you're probably like me, you're just constantly shifting all the time. On an hour-long ride, I'll shift like 200 times because I get to an intersection, right? And I think, oh, I may have to stop, I'll downshift. Oh, I didn't have to stop. Okay, I'll shift again. And I just do that constantly. With the new Vinci system, it's great because I don't have to shift until I'm actually needing to. So I don't have to anticipate. I don't have to make those preemptive shifts. And that really, for me, it transforms my riding experience. And that's one of the things that I've really loved about the Nevo, is it's become just this really enjoyable, pleasurable bike to just kind of get on and cruise and tour around, and all I have to think about is steering and pedaling. I'm not having to think about changing gears. I simply wait, and if I stop suddenly, or if I, even on a regular bike, if I see something and I want to stop, I automatically first gear down. I don't have to do that with this bike. I can simply go, oh, that's cool, I'm going to stop and look at that. And if I didn't downshift, no problem. Before I start pedaling again, I just make the little cyclist up a little bit of a hill. Makes it really easy to start. So maybe it seems like I'm going on and on about this new Vinci system, but it really is fantastic, and it's definitely worth considering and something that you want to try. And one of the neat things, and I mentioned, that the Riese Muller bikes are made in Germany. I've been to their factory, and when you come and you look at the bikes, you look at the quality, and then you ride it, the experience is exceptional. And part of that is just they put everything together to make the bike work exactly how they want it to. They have a vision for a bike, and they just choose all the components to really fit that vision, and it all comes together. Let me point out an example of the engineering that goes into that. So we've got the belt here, right? If this were a chain and you needed to replace the chain on a regular bike frame, you actually break the chain and take it off and then put a new chain on and close up the link. When you have a belt, obviously you can't do that. You can't cut the belt and then put it back together. And the reason for that is the chainstay. Let me show you on a regular bike here. Here's Tinker. Actually, I'll find a bike that actually has a chain on it. All right, here we go. Here's a bike with a chain. And so you can see we've got a chainstay here, and the chain goes above and below. So there's no way to get that chain off without breaking it. If this were a belt, that would be a big problem, because how are we going to replace the belt when it eventually wears out? Well, what Riese Muller did is they said, you know what? There's an easy solution. Let's put the chainstay above the belt. So you can see the belt is below the chainstay. A lot of bike manufacturers don't do that, because you're probably thinking, well, yeah, that's obvious. A lot of bike manufacturers keep the chainstay above and below, the belt above and below the chainstay, like you saw on the other bike, and then they put a plate with a couple bolts in it. And you take those bolts out, take the plate, and now there's a hole in your frame, and that's where you pass the belt through. And for Riese Muller, it's like, no, that doesn't seem like a great idea. We really want this bike to be stiff. We want it to last forever. Let's make an elevated chainstay. So now all you have to do is drop the rear wheel off and replace the belt and put it back on, and you're set. You don't have to make a hole in your frame. And so again, just little things like that show the attention to detail and the engineering that comes with a bike that's not only designed but made in Germany. And so you notice all of the details like that, and especially when you come to ride it, you really experience how all that comes together. Okay, so while I'm down here, I really should talk about the Bosch drive system. So we are using the Bosch Performance Line CX. That's Bosch's top-end drive unit, which is great. We're really fortunate here in North America that Riese Muller uses the CX on all of their bikes. And so a mid-drive, if you're not familiar with the concept, that means the motor is down here in the bottom bracket. And that has a number of advantages. First, the weight is centered on the bike, so the bike handles like a regular bike. It's not rear heavy, especially the Nevo. By putting the battery here instead of on the rear rack, it really helps with the handling characteristics of the bike to have that weight even and in the middle. A mid-drive also has the advantage of driving your chain, or in this case the belt, and so this actually turns your belt or chain instead of turning the rear wheel like a rear hub motor would. That means that when you change gears, or in this case change the gear ratio, that actually has an impact on your motor. So the Bosch system is actually quite clever. It has two features related to that. One is that it has shift detection. So if you get the bike with the gears, when you shift, it's going to very momentarily cut the power to the motor to help reduce the torque on your drivetrain to make it easier to shift and also to help your components to last longer. The other clever thing that it'll do is if you're in the wrong gear, it's actually going to show you on the display up here, there are up and down arrows that are actually going to show you, you're going to be more efficient and the motor's going to be more efficient if you were to shift up or shift down. And that's because when you change your gears, you're actually having an impact on the drive system. Unlike a rear hub motor, if you change gears, it doesn't affect the motor at all. It only affects your pedaling. But with a mid-drive, you're taking advantage of that mechanical leverage so that when you get to a really steep hill, you change gears. That also is changing gears on the motor, so to speak. So it's making it easier for the motor to help you climb that hill. So the other thing that a mid-drive does for you is obviously it's going to be easier to change a rear tire if you don't have the motor in the rear wheel. So I love the mid-drives, and I especially love the Bosch Performance Line CX. With the CX, you get a number of advantages. You get higher torque. Now, people always talk to me about the wattage on a motor, and honestly, the more important thing is the torque, because what you really want to know is, can it get me up the hills? And a mid-drive with a high amount of torque like the Bosch Performance Line CX, this has an incredible amount of torque. It'll really get you up the hill, absolutely no problem. The other nice thing about the CX is that it does come with what Bosch calls e-mountain bike mode. And you're thinking, what? This is not a mountain bike. I don't care about e-mountain bike mode. Well, what e-mountain bike mode does is it's an adaptive mode. So you can choose the level of assistance you want. If I pop up here to the Intuvia display, turn the bike on, you can see right now that the assistance is off, and on the thumb controllers here, which is easily accessible while I'm riding, I don't have to take my hands off the handlebars, I can press the plus and that moves that up to Eco. I can move it up to Tour, and then when I get to Sport, it actually is e-mountain bike mode. And then one more time moves it up to Turbo. Now when I'm in that adaptive e-mountain bike mode, that's actually going to automatically adjust from Tour all the way up to Sport and Turbo for me. So rather than me having to press the plus and minus to choose a level of assistance, it's kind of like an automatic mode. So if I'm cruising along on a flat section of the road, it's probably going to use Tour because that'll help prolong my battery life. But if I start pedaling harder because I've got a hill coming up, it'll move me up to Sport or even up to Turbo to help me get up the hill. When I get to the top of the hill, it'll move me back down again to prolong the battery life. So I really like that e-mountain bike mode because of the fact that I don't have to think about it. One of the things that I find myself doing is I get to a hill, I put it up to Turbo and I forget that it's there. And I'm cruising along after the hill going, wow, I'm going so fast, this is so easy, and oh, right, I'm still at Turbo, and that's going to reduce my battery, my range. So having the ability to automatically adjust it because it's got the Performance Line CX and I can use that e-mountain bike mode is fantastic. Before I go back to the Intuvia display, a couple more things about the drive unit here. We do have a really nice belt cover, or if you were to get the Touring edition with a chain guard, and that just helps keep your pants free from there and helps to protect the belt and the chain. And you can see it actually comes all the way underneath there, which is great. Pedals, we've got some fairly comfortable pedals with plastic grips here. If you ride in the rain a lot like I do, you might want to change these out to something with pins on them. Of course, Riese Muller didn't do that, and you know, it's hard being a bike manufacturer because nobody's going to like the pedals you put on the bike. And so some manufacturers don't even bother with pedals anymore. They're like, you know what, you're not going to like them, so just choose what you want and put them on. These are actually fairly decent, fairly good quality. They have reflectors built in, but like I said, if you ride in the rain, you may want to change them out to something with pins. So that's the Bosch Performance Line CX. It gives you lots of torque, lots of assistance for climbing hills, and it's very responsive. That's the other thing that I should mention about the CX, especially because it was originally designed for mountain bikes. They anticipated that you're going to stop partway up a really steep hill and want to start again. And so unlike a lot of e-bikes where you really have to have a complete pedal revolution before it kicks in, with the Performance Line here, all you need is a little bit of pressure on the pedals to tell the bike that you want to start going, and you get that assistance right away. So you really can stop in the middle of a hill and start back up. So let me before I come back up to the Intuvia display, I should talk about the battery. This is the Bosch PowerPack 500. It is a 500 watt-hour battery, and again, we're really lucky here in North America. Riese Muller is using the 500 watt-hour on all their bikes. I say that because last year, you know, and even now, a lot of bikes are still coming with 400 watt-hour battery packs. This gives you 25% more range. The neat thing about Bosch is they made this a battery backwards compatible. So this is a Bosch specific battery. It's not a Riese Muller battery, and this Bosch battery will work on any Bosch e-bike, not just ones from Riese Muller. And in fact, if you had a 4 or 5 year old Bosch e-bike and you wanted to put the new PowerPack 500 on it, you can. Bosch made the same format. They made it backwards compatible. And that's one of the real benefits of going with the Bosch system, is you know that they have a commitment to parts availability a long time into the future. So if you need something for your bike, 7 years from now, you can count on Bosch still having that available. And so when they come out with new batteries and things like that, you can still get those for your older bike. And that's really great to see. You're not relying on Riese Muller to have a battery available for you. You're relying on Bosch. And since Bosch works with 20 or 30 different bike partners to create e-bikes, you know that they have lots of batteries available and will continue to have them available in the future. It's not a proprietary format that if the bike company goes out of business, you're stuck. With Bosch, you've got that reliability factor and longevity, and that's one of the great things. That's what you're paying for with the Bosch system. Is it rides fantastic. It's a beautiful ride, very natural, responsive, powerful, but you're also getting that service commitment to parts availability. They've got 2 service centers in Canada where you can get parts from them. We can get a spare charger, you can get extra batteries, all of those things. The other thing I love about what Riese Muller is doing is the battery is just a plain Bosch battery. So a lot of manufacturers put, you can see over here, Felt puts a cool little felt sticker on their battery, and Bulls has some cool stickers on theirs as well, and Riese Muller, it's just plain, and you think, oh, well, why? Well, personally, I think it looks great. I think these are beautiful looking bikes. It's one of the things that everybody, comments on when they come into the store and they check out the Riese Mullers. They're beautiful. But that also means that should you get a spare battery because you want to ride all day, or you need a new battery in the future, you're not going to think, oh man, I don't have that sticker. It just does, kind of looks funny without it. It'll blend in really well. So little thing, but again, it's those small attention to detail that I think really sets the Riese Muller bikes apart. Okay, so let me come back up here now to the Intuvia display. Bosch does have 2 different types of display systems. They have the Purion, which is a smaller display that comes over here and it combines the buttons in the display. And they have the Intuvia, which shows you more information. It is removable, so you can take that off. You could also permanently mount it if you want. It does come with a screw that allows you to permanently mount the display. I do like being able to remove it. And if you remove it, it actually still works while it's off the bike. It has a battery built in, rechargeable battery, in fact, unlike the Purion, which is a disposable battery. And you can actually cycle through all of your trip information while the display is off the bike, so that's pretty cool. The Intuvia display also has the benefit of having a USB port here on the side that you can use to charge your devices, such as a phone. So that's pretty cool as well. And you know, I'm going to mention it right now because I always forget in my other videos to talk about the fact the Bosch system does have a walk mode. So I'm going to come back and show you the rest of the Intuvia display in a moment. But before I completely forget about it, over here on the left we can adjust the levels as I've shown you already with the plus and minus. But if we look right around the corner here on the display, you see the button there, it even says walk on it. You press and hold it, and then on the display it says, I have to be in a level of assistance here, eco, press and hold that. It says walk assist, press and hold plus. So now, press and hold plus, and the bike will move along, there we go, at about 4 or 5 kilometers an hour, a nice walking pace. Walk mode is really convenient in a number of situations. Obviously, if you're in somewhere where you can't ride the bike, a pedestrian zone, stairs, or a good example, coming off the ferry ramp. BC Ferries doesn't like you riding your bike up the ramp, and so just use a walk mode, and now the bike is going to move itself along. All you have to do is steer it, so that's pretty cool. Okay, let me go back to the rest of the display now that I've got that out of the way because I knew I'd forget. We've got up here the battery level. Right now we can see we've got 2 out of 5 bars. Sometimes people think, oh, you know, it'd be really nice to see a percentage there. Fortunately, the display here does actually calculate your range for you. So basically, this dynamically adjusts based on the charge that's in the battery and the level of assistance that you're in. And this will adjust as you ride and as you adjust the levels. So if I go down to Eco, you can see I've got 27 kilometers left with the 2 bars that I've got left here. If I move up to Sport or Turbo, that reduces it drastically. Now, don't take these numbers and extrapolate them because this is a new bike that hasn't been ridden, so it doesn't actually hasn't calculated the range based on the last few kilometers you've ridden. Typically, for my weight, the roads that I ride with hills here in Ladysmith, in the summer, I usually get, and this is just me, I usually get about 60 kilometers on tour with this battery, double that, 120 on Eco, and a little bit less on Sport and Turbo. But of course, that range will depend on a variety of circumstances and conditions. And in fact, if you go to the Bosch e-bike website, they have a range calculator there that you can play around with to see what your actual range will be. But you can certainly get quite the distance on that. So it's nice having that trip computer down here. So you've got the battery display, you've got your current level of assistance. When you're riding the bike, and you'll see this in the test ride video I'll do, there's a little graph here that's going to go up and down showing the level of assistance that the bike is providing. Your current speed, and then down here we've got the trip computer, and I've shown you the range on it. And you can cycle through the trip computer either through the I button on the display when the displays off the bike, but while you're riding, you're better off using the I button over here so you can keep your hands on the bars. Press I, you can see I've got the odometer, I've got the trip distance, I've got my clock, I've got the maximum speed, my average speed, and the trip time. The trip time is actually how long the bike has been moving. So if you stop at a stop sign or a traffic light or whatever, the timer actually stops as well. So that's just telling you your distance that you've ridden overall. All these values can be reset by pressing and holding the reset button. Interestingly, your maximum speed can be reset independently of everything else. So press and hold reset, it'll reset that while still keeping my average speed and the rest of the data. So then if I want to reset that, I press and hold the reset again, and there we go, that resets all of the data. So I guess if you're really proud of your maximum speed, you'd be able to keep that. So that's the Intuvia display, and the cool thing about the Intuvia display is you can actually remove the display and then put the Kobe system on as well if you wanted to use your smartphone to control the bike and control your smartphone from the bike. And I have a video review of the Kobe on our website as well over at citruscycles.ca. Okay, so let's walk through the rest of the components of the bike. It comes with a bell. That's kind of cool. And we've got these Magura MT4 hydraulic disc brake levers up here, which is nice. They do have an adjustable reach. And of course, having hydraulic disc brakes is a great feature to have on an e-bike. An e-bike is going to be heavier. You're going to be riding at faster speeds. And so you want to be able to stop confidently. We've got a nice big rotor on the back, or on the front and the back here. And with the hydraulic disc brakes, that means that there's hydraulic fluid running through these hoses rather than a cable. So there isn't a cable to stretch or break or rust or need adjustments. The hydraulic brakes are self-adjusting, and very little maintenance is required. The great thing about hydraulic brakes is you don't need to use your own mechanical force to stop the bike. You're using the force of the hydraulic fluid, like the brakes in your vehicle. So it means I can go down the steepest hill here in Ladysmith and literally stop this bike with one finger on each brake lever. And it's nice to see them using the Magura brakes. They're great quality. You'll also notice up front here we've got a nice bright Supernova headlight, and that is controlled by the Intuvia display up here. So I can press the light button. That's going to activate both my front and the rear light. The great thing about that is the light's permanently mounted, so I don't need to worry about forgetting to bring it, especially now in the winter. If I start heading out for a ride later in the afternoon and end up riding longer than I think, it gets dark, so it's nice having the light and honestly I ride with the light on all the time. The light is also running off of your main battery, so you don't have to worry about charging it. So you've got the light with you all the time, and you always have power for it. And on the rear here you can see we've got a nice rear light as well built into the rack. I'm just going to see if I can pull this one out here for you so you can see a little bit better. Here we go, and you've got built-in reflector as well. And speaking of safety and reflectors, all of the tires, whether you get the Big Ben Plus or the Supermoto X on the New Vinci GH, have a reflective strip in the front and the rear tire. And if you've ever shone a light on these, they're incredibly bright when you shine a light. So in riding at night, when a light car shines on you, you'll be very noticeable. So that's great as well. The rack. So here's another little interesting thing. The wiring for the light runs through the rack, and rather than under the fender like sometimes happens. And that's really a much better place for it, because you're not going to worry about it falling off on your tire and rubbing and getting wet and that sort of thing. The rack is fantastic. You can put standard pannier bags on here. It's got the pannier bag blocker, and it is rack time compatible, so you can get rack time accessories for the rack as well. And one of my favorite features in the rack is this bungee cord, and you may think that's funny that it's a favorite feature of mine, but there's been a number of times when I've been out for a ride, didn't bring pannier bags, or my pannier bags were full, I needed to put something on the rack. One time it was a jug of milk. And having this bungee cord means I always have a way of attaching something to the top of my rack. It's adjustable. I can really make it quite large to put large objects, like I said, a 4 liter of milk fit under there. But instead of it being a spring-loaded clamp, which are noisy and rattle, that's why they call them rattle traps, this is silent. I love having the bungee cord on there, and it's really, again, it's just nice attention to detail that they include with the bike. We've got the fenders, full coverage fenders. Here on the regular New Vinci, you can see they are attached in a number of places here, and they don't rattle. On the GH, we've got slightly wider fenders in order to accommodate the wider tire, and you can see we've added a couple more attachment points here, which is great to see. Again, nice little reflectors built into the forks here for visibility. And so those fenders give you nice full coverage if you're riding in the ring, which is great. And we also, of course, have a kickstand. This is I think it's a KS40 style kickstand that's on the back here, so it's not going to interfere with the pedals if you have the kickstand down and move the bike, which is great. And occasionally people ask me if these are the type of kickstand that automatically goes up, and usually they ask because they hate those, and I can understand why. No, we don't have a requirement here in Canada to have a kickstand that automatically goes up when you release the bike, so you don't have to worry about it accidentally going up and falling over. These are very sturdy kickstands. I haven't had any problems with them at all. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I mentioned we've got the reflective strips on the tires. These are balloon tires. They have a high degree of puncture resistance, which is great. We've got the green guard here. Basically, they have kind of a Kevlar lining to help with puncture resistance. And balloon tires mean that there's a high volume of air at low pressure, and that helps to absorb the bumps. And so in addition to the suspension fork, and especially for the rear tire, when you get a lot of air at a low pressure, that really absorbs a lot of the bumps and vibrations in your ride. And so it's interesting to me, with the medium and the large Nevo coming with the 28-inch wheel, it has a narrower tire than the 26-inch wheel, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is wider. I wonder if part of the reason is that allows Riese Muller to put a very similar volume of air in a smaller tire than in a larger tire, and again, that helps to smooth out the ride. And we've got as I mentioned, we've got the reflective strips on there as well. So hopefully, I knew I would forget something, and if I've forgotten anything else, please feel free to head over to our website at citruscycles.ca to ask questions. I forgot to mention we have the frame lock, and this is again a great feature that I love. With the frame lock, we've got a key here that is the same key that we use to remove the battery from the frame, so that's handy. You only need one key and you can remove the battery, or you can lock your bike. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do this with one handle. I've got it on the camera, but the idea is that you've got this metal bar here. Let's see if I can do this somehow. There we go. All right, we've got a metal bar here that comes through and locks into the other side there. So now the wheel can't be turned because we've got this metal bar securing it. And so that means nobody can ride your bike away. Now, obviously, they could pick your bike up and put it in the back of a truck. That's why we call it a cafe lock. So that means if you're sitting outside the cafe, your bike is somewhere that you can see, then you can lock it up, and you're going to be able to tell if somebody's trying to put it in their truck or something like that. The other neat thing though with the cafe lock is there is a hole here on the side, and let me grab the chain to show you what that looks like. Okay, so you can get this optional chain here. This is actually chain links. They're just protected by nylon, so it doesn't scratch up your bike or anything like that. And this end of the chain here goes into the hole on the cafe lock, and then you can wrap the chain around a pole or a bike rack or something like that. And again, we just have the one key, so we have one key for both the cafe lock and the chain and the battery, which is really cool. So if you need something more secure than just the cafe lock, then you've got this optional chain as well. And when I open up the key, then I can just pull that right out. So it's nice that it comes with the lights, the fenders, the rack, the bungee cord, the lock, everything that you need, even the bell, to get you under your way, having a really comfortable, safe ride. And really that's the great thing about the Nevo. It surprises everybody that rides it, because they're surprised to find how comfortable it is, how easy it is to ride. They love how responsive it is, how much fun it is. It's so accessible. It inspires you to ride. You want to ride more. And that's what you want. When you buy a new bike, you want to love riding it. And that's going to ensure that you do ride it more and more. This is a bike that requires very little maintenance, which is great. And so really, if you get the opportunity, come out and try it. Take advantage of our Try at Home program. If you have questions about it, you want to schedule an appointment with us, head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. So this is my second attempt at a ride test video. I did one yesterday, had a lot of fun on the bike, but the camera didn't work. So trying again today. Not that I really mind. It is a fantastic bike. I really enjoyed the ride yesterday. I'm sure I'll enjoy it again today. It's really very comfortable. One of the most comfortable bikes I've ridden. It's a great riding position. You've got these comfortable ergonomic grips. The saddle's comfortable. You've got the air shock on the front, head buster, suspension seat post. Just makes it a really enjoyable bike to ride. Now it was below zero overnight. We've still got some frost on the road today, so you may find me going a little bit slower or being a little bit more cautious than usual, and that's just me being aware of the fact that we could still run into some frost or some icy sections on the road. But this is actually a good bike to ride in the marginal conditions. I feel very confident riding it. I really feel with the riding position, with the way the bike handles, despite it being a step-through, it handles really well, and so I feel confident that I can control the bike in any situation. And of course these Supermoto X tires, the 2.4 inch wide, are also great in marginal conditions. Wet and slippery, they really grip really well. It's probably hard to tell because of the wind noise. This is actually a really quiet bike as well. There's just so many features that work together to make it such an enjoyable bike to ride. And certainly it's very smooth and comfortable, but even, you know, it's so quiet, just makes it, again, just contributes to that pleasurable experience of riding the bike. I think part of that is, you know, the NuVinci system in the belt is quite quiet. The tires don't have a lot of knobs, and so they roll really well. It's actually a fairly quick bike. It's hard to explain, and it's hard, I'm sure, in the video to really get the sense of how much fun it is to ride this bike and how everything just comes together. Riese Muller's just done a really good job of designing everything to bring it all together. And you may be wondering, well, you're just at the beginning of the video, how can you say all that? Well, like I said, I already did the video yesterday and just thoroughly enjoyed riding it. So again, me slowing down on that corner was not necessarily a function of not feeling confident in the bike, but just being aware of the fact that we could have some slippery sections on the road there. But you know, I was getting close to 50 down a hill around a corner. You can really lean the bike around there. And that's the nice thing about these wide tires, is they give you the ability to really lean the bike into corners, and it handles beautifully. It just tracks really well. And again, at no point did I feel unsafe, which is nice. You want to really feel confident on your bike, and the Nevo certainly helps you to achieve that confidence. Okay, back on the trail here, or soon to be on the trail, cycling path, and then eventually we'll get onto some hard packed gravel just to demonstrate the capabilities of the bike on trails. Now, I'm not sure if I'll have the opportunity in this video. Yesterday when I did the video that didn't work, I did a couple of hills where I took my hands off the handlebars. I'll try to remember to do that today if I can, just to show you that there is no speed wobble on this bike. That's a common concern with step-throughs. What happens is if the design of the frame and the lack of weight on the front handlebars can cause the whole bike to shake at certain speeds. And I've never experienced that with the Nevo. Haven't had any reports of that from our customers, and I've done a lot of testing on it, ridden it really aggressively, and never had any issues like that. I'll probably forget to tell you when I do it to warn you to not try it at home. You should, of course, always have both of your hands on the handlebars when you're riding for safety. Of course, with this Bosch CX drive, hills are no problem. We've got a little bit of an incline here. I'm in the sport or e-mountain bike mode,
So the Bosch system is dynamically adjusting based on my input. But if I didn't want to work as hard to get up this hill, I can just pop it up into turbo. And now, you know, if I were pedaling hard on the e-mountain bike mode, it's automatically going to put me into turbo. But if I don't want to pedal hard and still make it up the hill, then I can manually put that into turbo and put it back down. So I do like the e-mountain bike mode because a lot of times when I get to a hill, I would put it in turbo and then forget and leave it there. And of course that has an impact on your battery and the range. So it's nice having the e-mountain bike mode where it just does that automatically for you. One thing I've noticed riding the Nevo is I don't think I've ever had any pedal strikes. In other words, I've never had it where I lean over on a corner and pedal, you know, which on some bikes you shouldn't do because that does put your pedals closer to the ground. And in those cases, sometimes the pedal will strike the ground, giving you a pedal strike. I've never ever actually had that happen with an Nevo. It's interesting, I find myself on this bike, it really depends on my frame of mind and what I'm doing, because you can completely cruise and relax, and you know, it's a very upright riding position. You can see really well, you are seen by cars, but at the same time it's a bike that kind of invites you to push yourself. So sometimes I'll get on the Nevo, you know, and I'll just give her, I'll be you know, around that 30 kilometers an hour, and I can feel, you know, that I'm getting exercise. And that's the really interesting thing about e-bikes, is they've done a few studies that have shown, you know, that you really do get a good exercise on an e-bike. So it's neat that it's a bike that really can accommodate everything. If I just want to relax and cruise, I can do that. But if I really want to push myself and ride more aggressively, put more power into the pedals, I can do that as well. So now we're on the Stocking Creek Trail here. We've got some wet leaves and branches and twigs and stuff like that, some loose gravel, and these Supermoto X tires handle it all really well. You know, let me do a little bit of weaving here. Not sure if you can tell in the video, but I'm really, you know, moving the front wheel back and forth a lot, and it's just stuck to the ground. You know, there's no sliding at all. Let me brake quickly up here as well. This is kind of loose. I was able to momentarily lock up my rear wheel, but even then I didn't lose much traction or control. Stopped very quickly. One more time, just a quick stop. Yeah, the tires do really well. Here's some loose stuff and we pedal really hard. No, can't skid out on it either. So it's interesting because you look at the tire and you think, oh, you know, that's really very smooth. Is it gonna dig in when I need it to? And I've always found that they perform really well. Loose gravel, sand, not a problem. And you know, it's interesting, a lot of times people come in, I'll talk to them about what they plan on doing with their e-bike, their hopes. And I really encourage people to think big, to dream, because we always find people come back to us after a few months and they've used their bike a lot more than they ever thought they would. Because when you get an e-bike, you just start doing, you know, the longer rides, riding in maybe more marginal conditions, going places you didn't think you would go because you can. And so a lot of times people will say, oh, you know, I'm just going to be riding on the streets. And discover, you know, how much fun it is to ride on trails like this. So it's nice getting a bike like the Nevo that can handle all of that. It's a good example of the handling of this bike. You noticed, and maybe you can't tell from the video, I went really close to the edge of the trail there. There was a drop off, but I had a lot of confidence because I know the bike handles really well. I'm not going to fall off the edge, and if I do, you know, the bike's still going to be able to handle it. You'll be able to get back on fairly easily. And part of that is a product of these wider tires. It's really nice having that confidence. And so, like I was saying, you may find that even though you don't plan on riding on trails, you might just start doing that and start exploring. And it's nice having a bike like the Nevo that can handle that without any problems. I've got a fairly steep hill to head down here in a few seconds, and I'll come back up just to show you, you know, that the Bosch CX can really handle any hill, and the gear ratio, they've done a good job of finding a balance between being able to pedal fast, you know, still provide some input, but also still have enough of an easy gear for climbing up the hills. Now we get into a little bit of windiness here. And again, it's nice having a bike that handles really well on tight corners. You know, you don't have to feel anxious or nervous about running into the trees and off the cliff. It's going to go exactly where you want the bike to go. Well, I'll just do a loop here and we'll head back up the hill. I'm going to take you on some rocks and roots and mud, just to show you that if that's the type of thing you start doing, you can handle it with this bike. So you can see we've got some mud here and a few stones and rocks and stuff. Now, if this was most of your riding, then you might want to consider something with full suspension, like the Homage, which is very similar to the Nevo here, but with the full suspension. And that'll give you a lot more comfort and control. But, you know, if you're doing that occasionally, or, you know, even half of your time, then the Nevo works quite well for it. You can see there it was quite comfortable. The thud buster is helping out with the bumps, and the front suspension, of course, is absorbing a lot of that and keeping me in control. The last part of this hill is always the steepest. In my easiest gear, I'm in turbo, and no problem climbing up. I don't hear my rear wheel spinning out at all either, so that's great. This is another kind of rocky, rooty, windy, muddy section. And again, it's nice knowing that if this is the type of thing you want to start exploring, you can do it with this bike. And if this was most of what you're riding, and you don't want to spend the money on, you know, full suspension like the Homage or the D-Lite mounted or something like that, this bike will handle it quite well. But I would definitely say, you know, upgrade to the GH New Vinci to get the air fork and the wider tires and the thud buster suspension seat post. If now the GH New Vinci is only available in the medium and the large, so if that's too big for you, go with the 26-inch wheel Nevo. That still gives you a nice wide tire, gives you the air fork up front, which is nice. It gives you a decent suspension seat post. That's something that you could change, of course, to a thud buster or even a body float if you wanted to. And that's just going to give you a little bit more confidence on trails like this than, say, the regular Nevo New Vinci or Touring, which still has a, you know, very good tire. It's a 2-inch wide. Big Ben Plus tire, but it does have a spring fork, which is okay. But again, if you're mostly riding on stuff like this, it's worth the investment for the confidence and for the comfort. And really, this is handling incredibly well. This is actually a really bumpy trail. You can see all the little rocks and roots, and I really like the air fork. It's really very comfortable. The Thudbuster's doing a fantastic job. I gotta say, these tires are handling it very well. There was some frost on that section of the trail and didn't run into any problems with it at all. Well, that was fun. It's you know, a little bit of a steep trail with loose gravel, something, you know, I basically rode the Nevo like I would ride my mountain bike, which is great that it handles so well. You know, and I don't see or experience really a big increase in the rolling resistance with the tires when we do get onto the pavement. It seems that they roll really well. So there's not a lot of downside to these Supermoto X tires. Well, it's turned into a beautiful day. Still a little cold, maybe 2 or 3 degrees above zero, but it's nice with the sun out. It's not raining. This is still a great bike for the rain. We've got the fenders, tires handle the rain quite well. Some people don't like riding in the rain, but for me, you just have to have the right clothes and you'll be fine. Try to avoid startling people on the trail, so it's nice that the bike comes with a bell, a fairly sonorous flick bell. Fairly loud, but occasionally I think I need an air horn when I'm passing, you know, people that have their earphones on and aren't really tuned into what's going around them, on around them. Back before my wife got her homage, she had a Nevo, and this is actually one of my favorite trails to ride. If I've just got a short bit of time, maybe in an evening, you know, after work or whatever, I just love coming down here and riding back and forth. And I would often, you know, even though I have a number of other bikes I could ride, I'd often just hop on her Nevo because it is so comfortable, relaxing. You know, if you just want to kind of stroll around the neighborhood on your bike, it's a great bike to use for that. It's a nice looking bike as well. I'm on the red right now. I love the red, but I'm not sure. I'd have to check and see what our most popular colors are. Certainly the white is nice as well because it's fairly visible, and some people like the midnight blue because it's you know, more subtle, not as noticeable. The great things about the Bosch system is as you get over that 32 kilometers an hour, which is the legal requirement for e-bikes to stop providing assistance in Canada, it really just fades out very smoothly. So it's not a jarring feeling at all. It's quite smooth. Okay, we've got a bit of speed going here. Again, don't try this at home, but without my hands on the handlebars, getting up to 40, there's absolutely no speed wobble. Bike is tracking true, you know, not a problem at all. Like I said, I did a bunch of tests yesterday. I'll try to do one more today, but I have complete confidence in this bike. Again, not something you want to try at home. All it would take would be a pine cone in your way, or a squirrel runs out in front of you. You want to make sure that you got your hands on the bars, you're near them, and the brakes as well. I don't know if the camera angle allows you to see my hands here on the New Vinci system, but you've probably noticed I change it a lot. It's not a requirement, but you know, I'm spoiled, I guess, by the fact that you can really have any gear ratio you want on demand. So I might as well try to have my optimal cadence. And I just do that automatically without even thinking. It's like my hand and my feet are tied together. My feet start spinning too quickly. I twist this to a little bit flatter. If I need to spin a little bit quicker, I twist it to hill, and I'm good to go. So I make a lot of adjustments as I ride, especially on hills with variable grades, and I really appreciate that about the New Vinci system. I'll cut the camera out again here while we wait at the stop sign and pick it up later, maybe on another hill for you. So here's an interesting handling test. I actually have a fear of heights, and so I'm going to go across a fairly high bridge that's fairly narrow. And you know, if you don't have a lot of confidence in the handling of your bike, you definitely want to get off and walk it. But you know, I'm feeling pretty good about this, so I don't think I'll run into any problems. The trick is to not look down. It's so pretty down there, it's hard to avoid looking. So, no problem across the high, narrow bridge. And, you know, if I were on a bike that I had some concerns about, or just wasn't as responsive as I needed it to be, then, yeah, I wouldn't want to be riding across there. Another hill to climb it. Again, this is where I find, you know, that I do a lot of adjustments on the New Vinci system. And if you need to, you can rely on the shift recommendations of the Bosch system. So if I go into the wrong gear here, it generally is going to suggest that I shift. Now that's something you can turn on or off, so you may want to check that if you don't see the arrows showing up on your display. Press and hold the reset and I button at the same time. Gets you into the configuration menu. You can change the time and different things like that, and one of the things you can change is whether or not the shift recommendations come on or off. Alright, here's another speed wobble test. This time me pedaling, no hands on the bars, hitting 45 and no problems at all. And you know, I noticed about 45 is kind of the max speed that you can pedal and still provide input with the gearing that they've selected. So the New Vinci has a 380% gear ratio, which is well, in many cases bigger than a 10-speed cassette. So it definitely gives you the lower gear for climbing hills, and then the higher gear, like I said, yeah, about 45, a little above there, you're just going to be pedaling too fast. But you know, that's pretty quick, and mostly is only going to be happening when you're aided by gravity, such as that hill that I was on there. So we've got one last test for the Nevo here. It's on broken pavement and potholes, because well, we live in a country that has a lot of those. So if your ride is like this, you know, this is a great bike, especially with that upgrade to the GH New Vinci. or the 26-inch that's going to have the air fork. The GH Nuvinci, of course, gives you the thud buster, and it just handles it really well. I'm not having to avoid potholes, gravel patches. I can just ride straight predictably. I don't have to speed up and slow down because I know I'm not going to get thrown off my bike, and that allows me to be safer with cars because I'm riding more predictably. So next up, I'll do a video of the smaller size with the 26-inch wheel. That'll be a shorter one, but just to give you an idea of the differences between the bikes. Well, I hope my camera works this time, but if not, well, I'll do it one more time because it is a fantastic bike. I really enjoy riding it. And if you want to come try it yourself, if you have any questions, if you'd like to order one, you can head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. Okay, so even though I've already done a test of the Nevo GH Nuvinci, I thought I'd take you on a short ride test here of the Nevo Nuvinci with the 26-inch wheel, so that's the smallest size. And you know, I've got the seat up to the maximum allowable height, and I can actually fit it even though I'm 6 feet. So, you know, obviously if you're as tall as I am, probably isn't the best bike for you. You'd want to go with the medium or the large size. But I thought it'd still be fun to try out the smaller size, especially with the 26-inch wheel here, just to see how it compares. And certainly if you get the opportunity and you're a little bit on the shorter side, then this might be a really good bike to consider. And it is very interesting because, you know, I definitely notice the handlebars are much closer than the medium and the large size, so that does bring things a little bit closer. And I do notice, you know, these tires look smaller compared to the 28-inch or the 27.5 on the Nevo GH Nuvinci. So there's definitely that visual aspect, and I do feel a little bit closer to the ground, a little bit tighter, you know, it's lower down. Otherwise, you know, you still have that very comfortable upright riding position, which is great. I really like the riding position on the Nevo. The handling is very similar. I think it feels, you know, it's actually a shorter bike as well. I know when I was lining them up and comparing them, and I forgot to mention that in the video, that it's definitely a shorter bike as well, and that makes it feel a little bit different. I'm just having fun here maneuvering it. It's very maneuverable. Not that the larger size and the medium are not, but this definitely, you do feel that little bit of a shorter wheelbase. And of course, this always happens on my ride test. The phone is ringing. Alright, we'll continue here, and we'll find some gravel to test out these tires on. So it's very interesting, you know, that it is a wider tire than the medium and large size, not quite as wide as on the Nevo GH Nuvinci, but it's nice to have that higher air volume. So as I go over these bumps here, you know, the suspension fork is definitely kicking in, the suspension seat post is helping, and then the tires are also absorbing some of that. So it's really not a problem for me to ride right through those. So here's some gravel. And, you know, as I expect, it's not a problem at all. Braking on loose gravel, for example, these tires are gripping quite well. Cornering loose gravel, didn't have to slow down really to make that corner, and didn't have any problems at all. Again, it's nice being able to lean the bike over on the wider tires like this and have lots of surface for them to contact with the pavement. You know, the smaller size is actually kind of fun for cornering as well. It handles very well. Got it on the e-mountain bike mode, which is very responsive. The harder I pedal, the more assistance I get. Of course, I can move that down to tour if I want to conserve the battery life, since I'm on a flat stretch here. But you know, even on e-mountain bike mode, on a stretch like this, it's most likely to stay in tour. I think it's 6 feet. This definitely isn't the recommended bike. I think the primary thing I would find is it's a little bit close. I'd like to stretch out my arms a little bit more. But you know, even at 5'10", you might be able to make this size work. It's worth trying. You know, we would recommend the medium or the large size. But if you like the idea of the 26-inch tires, with the air fork, you're not interested in going up to the Vinci GH, this is something to consider, definitely. It is very fun. Quite a interesting contrast in that it's very upright, very comfortable, but it also feels kind of sporty, fun, you know, safe, definitely confidence inspiring. It's a good combination. I do like the 26-inch wheels, because with that wider tire there, you're still getting a good volume of air in there, and it's handling any of these bumps really well. Just head back up the hill here. Again, cornering on loose isn't a problem. Seem to be spanning the holes in the road fairly well. It is one of the advantages of a 28-inch tire, is it's going to span gaps a little bit better. But these are managing quite well. So if you don't fit the medium and large Nevo, having this option this year, new for 2018, the smaller size with these 26-inch wheels, really there's no downside. It's definitely a great bike. You know, we sold a lot of the Riese Muller Swing last year. It's definitely a very popular bike because people wanted something comfortable, upright, but they really liked having that smaller 26-inch wheel. And so I'm really excited this year that the Nevo is another option if you're looking for a 26-inch wheel, because I love the way it handles. It's still really comfortable, but you can definitely ride it more aggressively. I love having the Gates carbon belt instead of the chain, like the Swing. And I do like the battery placement, having it down here up front, centered in the bike, rather than the rear rack. But of course, all of those features come at a bit of a cost. There is a price difference with the Nevo being more expensive than the Swing. Another nice thing about this battery format instead of the rack is a lot of times we have couples come in to buy two e-bikes, and a lot of times, you know, for the taller of the two, they get a bike with a frame mount battery like this one. And it's nice when you can share the same battery format, because of course this Nevo also has the frame mount rather than the rack mount. And you know, if one person wants to go for a longer ride and bring the battery from the other bike, it's possible. The batteries are interchangeable. Or a lot of people end up buying a spare battery to share between two people. And once one of them is down to half, they put the fresh battery on, take the other one and use that as the reserve for the second person when their battery gets low. And it gives you, 50% more range than you'd have with just a single battery without the cost of 2 batteries. So lots of options. Anyway, I actually, I really like this Nevo with the 26-inch tire. It feels, a little bit different, a little bit closer, a little bit lower to the ground. So very comfortable, quite confidence inspiring. I'm really happy with the combination of them. If you have any questions about the Nevo or e-bikes in general, happy to answer them. Just head over to our website at citruscycles.ca.